Smithsonian is now home to the world's rarest stamp worth nearly $10 million. The One-Cent Magenta has been hidden from view for a significant part of its more than 150-year history. Now, thanks to luxury shoe designer Stuart Weitzman, the stamp is now on display for all to see. Its rich and colorful history is chronicled in a new book by New York Times reporter James Barron. And Jan Crawford went inside a Smithsonian museum in Washington to find out what makes this little tiny piece of paper so valuable.
Well, good morning. So the One-Cent Magenta, which is here at the National Postal Museum, sold a few years ago for $9.5 million. That is nearly 1 billion times the face value of the stamp. In fact, it's the only British colonial stamp that Queen Elizabeth doesn't own. And the current owner, you might have heard of him, entrepreneur and high-end shoe designer Stuart Weitzman. This is the stamp in here.
Well, it's in there, yeah. It's protected pretty well.
This little stamp, called the One-Cent Magenta, is so precious, owner Stuart Weitzman can barely show it to us. This is what it looks like up close. It's said to be, when you account for size and weight, the most valuable object in the world.
And the only one of its kind in the world.
Well, I keep hoping that. It would be quite a shock if someone came up with another one.
The One-Cent Magenta was printed in one of the British colonies more than 150 years ago.
That one is a stamp of Susan B. Anthony.
Author and New York Times reporter James Barron says it was all but forgotten until a 12-year-old boy discovered one of the stamps in his uncle's basement in 1873.
Why care about a stamp?
It's history. It's a way of seeing how the world was connected. It's a way of thinking about how people are connected.
The stamp has also connected a handful of people who have spent fortunes to own it, including an American chemical company, Air, and now the renowned Stuart Weitzman. It was 1952. Weitzman was 10 years old when he learned about the stamp from none other than Donald Duck.
Let's see now.
In a comic book, which now also is at the Smithsonian, Donald Duck launches one of his schemes to get rich quick, the hunt for the One-Cent Magenta.
He goes to the jungles of British Guiana to try to find this relic, and I don't know how he ended up, but obviously I got the stamp. He didn't.
Yeah, you beat Donald at his game here. Weitzman grew up collecting stamps in Queens, New York.
I don't know today how kids collect stamps.
But his stamp book had one prominent hole, a spot for the One-Cent Magenta.
And I love geography, so it provided a bit of an education, a lot of fun. It was a childhood thing. You know, I eventually gave it up.
You thought you gave it up?
Well, yeah. I discovered girls. That was the end of the stamps.
That is, until the stamp's previous owner, John E. DuPont, died in jail.
I spent my lifetime looking for a father, and I found one in John DuPont.
DuPont, the heir to the chemical fortune, who was portrayed by Steve Carell in Foxcatcher, was imprisoned for the third-degree murder of a gold medal wrestler.
You ungrateful ape.
According to Barron, DuPont even tried to use this stamp as his get-out-of-jail-free card.
One of the things he thought was if some museum could put in a good word, could arrange a pardon, he'd let that museum have it.
But that was a non-starter. He wasn't going to get out of jail with this stamp.
No, didn't happen.
Instead, in 2014, it went to auction. And Weitzman, who later would sell his shoe empire to Coach for $500 million, bought it so the world could see this one-of-a-kind treasure. But first, he had to get it to the Smithsonian.
You know how I brought the stamp to Washington?
No, how?
In my sock.
You did?
Where else was I going to put it?
Well, I've read stories about the previous owner, had it in a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist.
It's just telling somebody you've got something. Didn't you watch Mission Impossible?
I'm taking that briefcase.
So you had a better plan.
Yeah, I dressed up like a vagabond, you know, and I didn't shave for 2 days.
And how better to be inconspicuous and
look like
have a
bum.
2-day, look like a bum, and put the stamp in your sock.
Mm-hmm.
$9.5 million. That little piece of paper in your sock. That's how you got it to this museum.
Yeah.
It's been described by an expert as the ugliest stamp he has ever seen. $9.5 million, you paid for it.
I would like to see what art he appreciates.
Because it's not about how it looks.
No, it shouldn't even be judged that way. So his attention is on the wrong characteristic of that stamp. It is one of a kind. What else could it be? And it was hidden for 150 years.
Shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah.
This Smithsonian exhibit is the most publicly accessible the One-Cent Magenta has ever been. But this transcends stamp collecting for Stuart Weitzman. He appreciates one-of-a-kind things, like this Cognac Spectator pump, which was signed by the 1941 Yankees.
The only signed pair of shoes in baseball history.
Whose shoes were these?
They were the girlfriend of Joe DiMaggio. What might have only made it a little more exciting if he had taken Marilyn Monroe's shoe to be signed, right?
And then there is Weitzman's childhood stamp album.
I have said this to anybody who ever asked me about what was one of the things I got most out of my childhood toys and games and sports or hobbies. I learned history from this book.
His childhood quest, some 60 years in the making, is now complete. Now, the One-Cent Magenta will be here at the National Postal Museum until November, and then Stuart Weitzman is going to have to decide what to do with it. And if you actually come and see the One-Cent Magenta, you can make a personalized stamp of your own. Although, I got to say, it probably won't be worth quite as much.
Jan, thanks.
Where else do you have a story with Donald Duck, Stuart Weitzman, and John DuPont?
John DuPont Foxcatcher, yeah.
Unbelievable.
It had so many layers to it. It just kept going. It was great.
I have no idea where my stamp collection is.
Yeah,
Find it.
Probably not worth $9.5
No,
million,
I don't think it
but
is,
It might be
but-
worth finding.